Hello, hello, hello. It's LaMeel, the money goddess from LaMeel.com and the founder of the Credit Empowerment System. And so in this video, what I'm doing right now is just giving you a really quick introduction to some of our success stories. These are clients that have gone through the Business Credit Empowerment System. They are using the Business Suite and they are doing it very successfully. And hopefully this will help you answer any additional questions that you have, see and hear firsthand how this process has helped and benefited other business owners. Very informative. It's about an hour long, but it will give you a really, really good external viewpoint of how successful you can be using the Business Suite, going through the Business Credit Empowerment System. And this is a webinar that was co-hosted with me and a business partner. So you'll hear him asking some of the questions towards the end and get these different clients giving their responses. They are totally off the cuff. Nothing is scripted. This was a live Google Hangout type of webinar. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any other questions, feel free to get in contact with us and we'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, I'll start. My wife had to step away real quick, but I'm Diafla Sample. Currently, me and my wife, Thelma Sample, we started a business about 5 years ago in the tax relief space, and we started actually, and I tell this story all the time because it's amazing how far we've come. But we worked at a former company, saw that there was an opportunity for us to be able to step out and to do this ourselves. And so we had about $1,200 that we actually started with. I had an old 83 Chevy pickup that I sold for $800. And I had a 55-inch flat screen TV I sold for $400. And with $1,200, we actually started 5 years ago, and we hadn't looked back since. Ever since we've been in business, every year from September 8th of 2010, every year after that, we've been able to do a little bit more than $1 million in business every year since. So it's been phenomenal.
That's amazing. Now, so you've been an entrepreneur then for about 5 years. Before that, what did you do before that?
Well, I've been in different business ventures before that. Some I've made some money, some I haven't. I've been in sales for the last 20 plus years. But there were some other businesses that I was a part of and had the opportunity to actually start some. Some weren't so successful. Some we made a little bit of money, some we didn't.
Nice. Okay. Well, and I like the fact that you're in tax space because you're like a perfect candidate because, tax space is high risk, just like, credit repair, anything in the financial services is deemed as high risk. So, these results will be perfect because it reflects somebody that's even in what is a high risk industry in the financial services space to get money. So this will be a good conversation. Now, when did you guys get started with us to offer business credit and financing?
Actually, we started about 18 months ago. Is okay. Actually when we started initially with the software services and just following that particular system and doing everything that the system suggested. We were able to obtain business credit. I would say about 75 or 80,000, probably about half. Half.
So about half of it you went forward with, offered the social, offered the personal guarantee. You're okay with that because whatever, it was still based on your business credit. And then the other half you obtained without a personal guarantee.
Right.
Okay, perfect. So now initially, what steps did you take initially to set up the business credibly? So, the very first step we go through is credibility. So when you got to that step, what kind of things did you need to do to actually make sure that your business was credible that you hadn't done already?
Well, first thing that we needed to do, we need to make sure that everything matched in terms of the the address. We set up everything, make sure that the business bank accounts, the name on the business bank accounts matched. We had to set up a corporation. We had to make sure, that we had all the approved licenses. Make sure we were registered with the 411. Go, the 20-point checklist that the software teaches us.
Dun and Bradstreet.
Being establishing a DUNS number with Dun and Bradstreet, as well as with Business Experian and Business Equifax. So those were some of the steps that we took to start out with establishing business credit.
So there's a lot of the stuff you just didn't know. I mean, at that point, you didn't have any knowledge. You didn't know these things needed to be done. Your bank hadn't told you. So did you find that first step helpful, where we really mapped out step by step, this is what you need to do to be credible? And were there things in that step that surprised you that you'd never even thought of or never would have thought to address before you would have went out and started to apply for money?
Absolutely. Without the steps in detail written out, we would have been lost. It would like handing us a golden egg and not knowing what to do with it. So absolutely, the steps were helpful. It lets you know what to apply for, when to apply for them, what the underwriting guidelines were. I mean, that was like one of the best parts about it. We're so grateful for the steps.
So Thelma, when you talked to your bank, what kind of feedback did you get? I mean, they turned you down when you went to apply for financing. Did they give you any feedback of what could have worked, what you should have done, why they didn't approve you, what could have been changed where they would approve you? Did you get any feedback from them at all with that?
Absolutely no. And Ty, I will tell you this. Here's what was so hurtful. Our merchant was set up through our bank. So you see all the money, you're talking almost triple digits running through there throughout the year. So to say we didn't get approved for anything without explanation, yeah, that's really hurtful, because you see all the revenue that's coming through there, and we've built a personal relationship with the people at the bank, so they know us by first name. They know us so well, we don't have to show an ID if I go in there to cash a check. That's the relationship that we have.
Yeah, and you touched on an important point, and like literally stuff like this makes me like my hair stand up on my arms, because I'm the same way, right? Like when I walk in my bank, everybody says, hey Ty, and I don't even go in there that often, but they just know who I am. So the problem is that you go in to get money, you do your business with them, they love and appreciate your business, that's why they know you, and then you're applying for something they can't help you with, and the result of that is you walk away feeling hurt. And you tell me, I mean, did that damage kind of your relationship with the bank? Did that damage how you kind of looked at them and viewed them?
It really did, Todd, because now one of the actual president of the bank, she's really, really friendly. She's always very cordial when we walk in, but it's just when I see her now, I just view her as someone that, I'd like to go into the bank knowing that the bank actually has my best interest in mind. And I don't feel that now that I know with our being turned down and with no explanation at all as to why.
Okay, so this is very important for everybody to hear, because so many, and I talk about this all the time, the best affiliate source you're ever going to get is a bank. And people say that makes no sense. Why would a bank give me a lead? And here you're listening to it firsthand. This is the reason why, because they know this happens. They have a good relationship with you. They want your business. You respect them. They respect you. Then you try to get a business loan, and they deal with very low risk business loans. You didn't have all the stuff that they needed to have to approve you, so they deny you. Now they have a damaged relationship as a result. And because they weren't willing or knew somebody that they said, look, I can't help, but this person would, they left you hanging. They didn't even say, we can't help you, someone can, right? They didn't give you any assistance. They didn't give you any guidance of who else would go to. And so now that relationship is forever broken. It's forever damaged. And this is a good lesson for everybody on the call, because this is exactly why banks are good places to get business. This is the result of somebody getting turned down and how it emotionally affects them. And then that permanently causes a rift in that banking relationship. Whereas if somebody else came and you believed they cared at another bank, you'd probably be more inclined to switch over now than you would have before this event, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so this is exactly why banks are great places to get business, because they don't want to turn you down, but unfortunately, you don't meet the requirements they have to. They're not permitted to tell you why, which is the sad part. They're restricted to tell you why, so they know they're losing a relationship and it's hurtful. So I'm sorry that happened to you, but it is a good reflection for everybody of why banks are great places to get customers, because this is the emotional impact that it has. Now, that being said, what type of money did you get to, or what type of cost did you really find in setting up the business credibly? Because, a lot of customers have that concern. Well, how much is this going to cost me in step one? So do you have an idea of how much you spent to get the 411 and a virtual address and licensing and any of that stuff that you needed to make sure was required to make sure that you were credible?
The only thing that we spent in terms of just setting up the LLC, and we ended up going through LegalZoom to do it. In terms of setting up, and I think we paid like maybe $300 or something like that. But as far as going through with the 411, getting everything set up with all of the other sources that the software suggested, we even received a discount with getting things set up through Ring Central, because that's who we use for our phone systems. So it was very helpful, and we were able to save a lot of money actually using the software.
The affiliate sources. Okay, so then you're a good example, because you had to do it all. I mean, you got the entity set up, you got the phone set up, you got everything set up through the system. And did you get and you got a discount because that's part of the affiliate links we have in there, but did you feel that it was overwhelming and expensive to set up and do all the things that were needed to make sure that you were set up credibly?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you had to put a cost to it out of pocket, you're maybe talking $300, $350. If that is very low cost. In time wise, it wasn't even a lot of times because you're following all the steps. So it's just you setting it up, following the steps, and just doing. The hardest part for most people is getting started.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I want to focus on that, because so many people struggle in that first thing. Now, I think the way the suite's laid out, it makes it easy because it's step by step. And that's how my brain works, is I like to go through almost a checklist to check things off. And that's the way the suite is set up. But it takes this complicated process and simplifies it. But some people have that concern about cost. So I'm glad to know you didn't feel it was expensive. $300, $400, $500. You're out the door with everything you needed to set up the business credibly. Now, did you get your full business reports? I know, in the finance suite, you get access to Experience Smart Business. So did you run your business through the Experience Smart Business to see how many trade lines you had?
Yes, we did.
And did you have any trade lines established at that point?
Well, once we started getting everything established and initial part of it, we could see where the trade lines were starting to report.
Okay. But in the beginning, before you started using and applying for accounts through the system, you didn't have any accounts reported.
I think we may have had one, and we didn't even know where it came from.
Okay. Did you ever investigate that? Like, did you get your full reports to see what that account was?
Yes, we ended up going in and getting set up and getting the monitoring system so that we can monitor everything, on a monthly basis. And once we got everything set up,
it was AT&T reporting.
Okay, so it was AT&T reporting,
Right.
which is good to know. I'm not sure if we have AT&T in the back office, but if not, that's something I'm going to mention to Megan too, so we can get it added if not. So you had an AT&T reported. Did you get full reports with D&B or Experian or both or Equifax? I mean, who did you get your full reports with?
we ended up getting our full reports with all three of the business
Right.
credit bureaus.
Which I agree with. I mean, a lot of people don't want to spend the cost to do so, but hey, it's like I have credit monitoring every month on the consumer side. I don't think anything about it. I think you should have it. So I think it's a good call, but a lot of people are afraid of that price, that cost. With you, it was helpful because you found out it was AT&T based on your actual report, I would imagine.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then when you got the credit monitoring, did Dun & Bradstreet Credibility call you and try to sell you their credit builder package, their DUNS number, all that crap?
Well, I gotta say, I made a mistake.
Uh-oh. So what happened?
Yes, they called us.
They called you, and I want to point that out because if anybody gets credit monitoring with D&B, then D&B credibility is going to call you. And let me just tell everybody here, there's a difference. Dun & Bradstreet is not Dun & Bradstreet credibility. Dun & Bradstreet credibility is a privately owned company. They've only been around 5 years, and so far they've accumulated a class action lawsuit every year since inception. They are not good people because they lie and say you need things that you don't need. So let's dive into that. So you got credit monitoring and D&B credibility called you, and what happened?
Well, we ended up going with the idea of needing D&B credibility services, and I ended up paying $600 to get that all set up and get it established when I really didn't need it.
Okay, now, so this is important because you just so you know, don't be embarrassed. And just so everybody knows, I think you'd mentioned this in boot camp, but I didn't even think about that when I wrote down this question to ask you. But you are not the first. A lot of people get scammed by them the same way. So I want to address this because I want everybody to know, for yourself and for your clients, that when they get credit monitoring from D&B credibility is going to call them and try to sell them on something they don't need. So this is something you want to alarm your clients or alert your clients to, and our advisors do the same thing if they're aware this is happening. So what did D&B credibility tell you when they called, or what did they tell you when they called you?
Well, they were basically just selling you on the idea of establishing business credit. You're going to need this so that you'll be able to add trade lines, be able to add your trade references, and really made it believable. I mean,
did you ever do any of that stuff? Did you ever add trade references or any of those, or even try to do that with them?
Let me tell you, it was a nightmare. I tried to do it, and it was a total nightmare with them having to verify with my vendors, saying that, if they give you 3 choices, you can do it by phone, by fax, or by email. And when I went in to put the vendors whom I wanted them to contact, it appeared, or it seems as though they were never contacted for whatever reason. Okay. A couple of them did reach out to them and make contact with them, but they still didn't add them. And then when they did add one, it was incorrect.
Okay, I love this because honestly, I hadn't even thought about us going down this path, but I'm so glad that you're on the call because I preach and preach and preach about this exact same thing, but you're the first person that's ever been here as a witness to say this is exactly what happened, which coincides with exactly what I tell people, because D&B credibility chooses who they will put on your report. And the biggest complaint about that is that they can't get a hold of the vendor. The D&B credibility says they call, or they do call, they can't get in touch with the vendor, and then the whole process starts over. You got to get back in touch with them. You got to get them to get back in touch with the vendor. I've heard that there's elaborate problems with trying to connect D&B credibility with the vendor you're trying to get reported. Is that what you found?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
That is exactly what happened. It was a nightmare. It really was, because I was constantly calling back over there and, trying to justify spending the money, the $600. And, they made this grand speech about how they were going to contact them and all the different ways they had of contacting them. You go in and check which way is the best way to contact them. And it still, somewhere along the way, that process breaks down and they never really connect.
They never really connected it. So you paid them $600 for a credit builder program where they add references to your credit report, basically. And in the end, you only got one account ever reported, and it was reported wrong.
It was reported wrong.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Now Brian had asked, when with AT&T, was that was a home phone or a cell phone that you ended up getting added on there?
No, that was business.
It was business. Initially,
Business.
when we switched over from AT&T and went to Ring Central. For whatever reason, AT&T, like I said, we didn't know who was reporting,
Right.
but AT&T were reporting.
Yeah, they do
Okay.
report.
And just so I took a step back, everybody, so you know that, because Brian had asked a question in the chat, and you all can feel free to ask questions in the chat. So this wasn't something that D&B Credibility did. This was something they just realized was on their report well before they paid D&B Credibility money. Okay, so D&B Credibility tried to also probably convince you that you needed them to get your DUNS number or credit profile activated. I mean, was this the kind of languaging they used with you?
Yes, it was a hard sell.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, this is the same script that D&B Credibility follows. You can go online and get the script. I have. Okay, I've talked to actually their employees before. I actually talked to a guy that saw it was crazy. He saw my webinar. He goes, this is so correct. And he emailed me. He quit the next day. He was going to quit. He did. He quit the next day. I couldn't believe it. And this guy's story was so amazing. So they say the same things. It's a hard sell. They tell you have to have it. You have to pay to get your credit profile activated. You have to get a DUNS number. And they sold you, and that's okay because they sell a lot of people. So this is a learning lesson for everybody. Okay, so that being said, did they end up getting you the DUNS number? Or were you able to get it through the suite before they got to you?
We were able to actually, we didn't have a DUNS number at first.
Okay.
Until the vendor credits started to report. Okay, but it's funny you shared that story about the gentleman that quit, because the guy that sold us the business credibility corp services quit the very next day as well.
And he called us.
He called us.
And told us everything.
He did, right? It was crazy. The same thing happened to me. This guy, and I didn't know if it was like what it was, if it was crazy, but he told me it all. He said, look, I feel so guilty now after seeing your webinar because they have us selling things. They have us saying things that aren't true. They tell people that we're looking at their reports when we're not looking at the reports, and we have all kinds of quotas that we have to meet and are required to meet. And I mean, is that the kind of stuff that the guy gave you feedback is pretty similar? Or what else did he tell you beyond that?
Yes, and he also said this too, Ty, and it's something D and I take a look at. Some companies, so people won't keep this in mind, they can sabotage you. And I'll give you an example what I mean by that. I'll make sure I say it right. They'll kind of say stuff like, well, if you don't sign up with us, this won't go very well for you. It's kind of like a threat within a threat.
Sure.
And the guy told us that. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So when we were getting our vendors added, I told D something's not right, because we would have, here's what we did one time. We had one of our vendors, a throughway called to Dun & Bradstreet to make sure it got added. So it appears that you get an email, yeah, we're going to add such and such. Well, he never got added. We were on the call. We recorded the phone call. After we took that drastic step, then they added him. We had to tell them, hey, we were on the phone call with you guys when you said everything was fine. But then you come back and say you couldn't verify the vendor. So what is really going on? Then they call you again. They want to upsell you on something else. They want to keep selling you and closing you and selling you. If you don't know any better, you will get caught in that trap. We didn't know any better.
Yeah, and I actually have a gentleman that I'm meeting with this week, just specifically for the exact same thing happened to him. They ended up getting $1,200 from him, and I basically shared with him, I can show you a way that you can access your D&B reports without spending one dime.
Right, which is crazy. I mean, you're talking about you spent $600. This dude spent $1,200. Yeah, they could buy a finance suite for $2,500 and get everything D&B offers and then some. They get the DUNS number. They get the credit profile activated. They don't have to go through any of this crap of adding trades and all this stuff. And in the end, if D&B Credibility continues to upsell you, it ends up being less than what you'd end up spending on their upsells. Okay, so let's move on. I don't want people to think that I'm just, tearing up D&B Credibility. Guys, I'm just have ethical problems, I mean, like, I'm cool. If you do business and you have a valuable service, you shouldn't have to lie about it. And the very first way they start every call is, hey, somebody inquired about your business. And, if they're just cold calling you, someone inquired about your business, you look like you're unestablished or bankrupt. That's just when nobody even inquired about the business. So those kind of practices I have a problem with, and that's why they've got 5 class action lawsuits. But that being said, so what vendors, so let's get past all that. You learned from D&B Credibility. Did you ever get your money back from them, by the way?
No, we didn't.
You never did. Okay. So that was behind you. Then you got started with the finance suite. You were able to build vendor credit. So which vendors did you start with initially? You only had AT&T reported. So what vendors did you start with initially to build your initial business credit?
We started with Quill, Radio Shack, Printer for You. Trying to think of what we had.
Yeah, we started with Tiger Direct.
Tiger Direct.
Tiger Direct, Quill, Radio Shack, and a Printer for You.
Printer for You.
Okay, so which are all the starter vendors in the suite. Now, when you went through, were you able to find these companies? Did they have stuff that you would want to have, that you would want to buy?
Absolutely. Quill is just like Walmart, and they deliver the very next day or the same day, depending on when you place your order. So you can get office supplies, you can get computers, you can get desks, you can get snacks, you can get coffee. So everything we needed, we were able to obtain from them to run a business. Yes.
Okay, so so that makes sense. So then you went in, you were able to get Quill, you were able to get, a lot of stuff that you found, because this sometimes we hear, right? Sometimes the end customers will actually come in and say, well, hey, I couldn't find anything that I wanted to use or that I wanted to buy. But a Printer for You and Quill, a lot of these places you found that you had no problem finding stuff that you would normally need and want to buy anyways.
Exactly. And it's at good prices. I mean, of course, you're going to need pen, you need paper. We bought headsets, we bought computers, we bought printers, shredders. Those are the basics you need, to function as a business on the administrative side.
Okay, which is perfect. So you found stuff that not only helped you build your initial business credit, but that you actually had a use for. So what did you buy? I mean, how much stuff did you end up spending with them, or what? So you already described some of this kind of stuff that you did buy. Is that the kind of stuff that you ended up buying, was paper, supplies, that kind of stuff?
Right. And we also bought computers when they went down. So you have to go out and spend a whole bunch of money at one time. So they have good deals on their computers. We bought, help me here, Dee, printers. We bought,
we bought everything that you would typically need to
pens, paper,
to furnish an office.
Ink is very expensive.
We have 3 different offices plus a call center, so we needed, quite a few items to initially get us off the ground and get us going while we were establishing and setting everything up.
So you came in with little money, $1,200 to start the business, and you found that not only were these accounts that helped you build business credit, but you found a lot of stuff you actually really needed and ended up using to be able to furnish the office, get the computers, get the actual stuff that you needed to put in the office. So it was kind of a dual thing for you. You got the benefit of building the business credit, and you got accounts that you actually ended up using for real stuff you needed to furnish the office.
Yes.
And it's a write-off time.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, and it's always interesting in this stage with vendors because you've got a lot of whiners. You got people that are like, oh, woe is me. This is so much work. But you get it for what it is. You're like, heck with this. This isn't work. They're giving me money on net 30, net whatever terms. So this is money that I'm able to use to build the business anyways and be able to get the business credit. And I think that's the attitude I'd love for everybody to have, because I think it works well. I mean, that's what you were able to do, is fund the business initially and build the business credit. So it was, dual benefit.
Absolutely. And Ty, it's just a little bit of work, but here's the thing, you can't complain about results for work that you don't put in. So it's just a little bit of work. We're business owners. We do it anyway. And you're just working smarter now. It's not tied to your social. It's under the EIN number, and you're building something.
And then and it also too, it's delaying that cost today.
Right.
While cash flow is still coming through the business. And then I can take care of that later on and at a net 30 or net 60 when I'm invoiced or whatever, and take care of it at that particular time. And it allows me to be able to schedule all of my payments and when I want to pay at one time, as opposed to, having to deal with it multiple times throughout the month and those kinds of things.
Perfect.
Yeah, positive training.
So then you ended up spending, do you have any idea on how much money you ended up spending with these type of vendors? I mean, just roughly in the beginning, the initial vendors, like what kind of money you ended up spending the first few months?
With Radio Shack, we probably spent about $1,000, because that was for office supplies and just different things we needed, network cables, different things that we needed. We also put a TV in for the sales team. So I would say probably
computers. I mean, we spent
maybe $2,500 with Tiger Direct.
Yeah. And then, so let's say initially the first few months, let's say just to round it off, about 10,000.
About 10 grand on the vendors. And those were ones that you didn't need to spend 10 grand to get the business credit reporting. You were just really using them to get computers and things you needed to get to fund the office, basically.
Right. And we bought furniture, cubicles, those type of things.
Okay. So now how many vendor accounts did you actually get approved for? Of the ones you applied for, and we talked about a lot of the ones you applied for, of the ones you applied for, what was your success rate? How many of those were you really able to turn around and get approved for, or how many of them denied you?
We total, it's you say vendor, 12 total, and I believe we were turned down for one or two.
One or two, but here's the funny part, Ty. It was only based on the address because of how the name was set up. It had nothing to do with actually being turned down. It was our fault because we weren't showing right with 411. So it was our fault. It was address-wise why we got turned down.
Okay, which makes sense. So you had good luck then. You went through the finance suite, the starter vendors you applied for, a lot of them. It sounds like almost all of them you applied for.
We did.
Following the steps, you were able to get approved for. It sounds like almost all of them, except for one that you knew what was wrong. You were able to go back and correct, and you were able to find a lot of them that you really had a use for. You even bought a lot of products and services for that you used to then actually set up the initial office.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then what about the advising team? I mean, was our advising team involved in this process helping you? And what did you find about them helping, their coaching, their services? How valuable was that to you going during this process? Or did you just kind of say, I'm doing this on my own, I don't really need your help?
No, I mean, the advisor team, these guys are great. Whenever we had any kind of questions or anything in terms of anything that we needed answers to, I mean, the advisor team was right there to guide us through the process, to help us to kind of figure out where we may be, if we were making a mistake or not. They were really, really very helpful throughout the entire process, and still are.
Okay, perfect. That's what I like to hear. And if anything ever changes there, let me know, because I always ask you that question when we talk. What can we do better? So how much do you think in total vendor credit, not actual store revolving credit cards, but your initial vendors that you went in to get approved for, to buy all the stuff to set up the office, to start building the business credit, about how much total do you think you obtained in vendor credit from that first initial round of approvals?
First initial round of approvals was
those starter vendors.
Yeah, the starter vendors was let's say about $7,500. The first round, about 75, maybe 10,000, somewhere up in there. I may be missing one or two, and that may be that's 25. Another 45.
Oh, we also had Uline. Here's the funny part about us. I just know I just truly believe it was God showing favor, because we didn't have a set limit. When I ordered from Quill, I called in the place at first order. She never said I had a limit. I just was ordering away, and it went through. Same thing with Tiger Direct. They never said I had a limit. Uline didn't either.
Say 2,500.
Yeah, Tiger Direct said 2,500. That was my limit with them. But Quill never gave me a limit. I was just shopping away. Same thing with Uline. They didn't verify anything. She took my order. I placed like maybe $800 order. They took my name, took the EIN number, took the address down, and I got my stuff the next day.
I don't know if that's typical or not.
I don't know if that's typical or not, but I don't know if I don't know if it's typical or not, but I just believe it was favor for us because we didn't get a whole lot of flack about what we ordered.
Well, and what's interesting about this, and that's what I say, is that typical this is the process. I mean, what we find is that people either go through the process or they don't. If you go through the process, this is what you're going to expect. I mean, they don't modify these things for one person for the other. It's just a lot of people we see don't take the action. But what you're saying is, it sounds like conservatively, 7,500 to 10,000 in initial credit you got with starter vendors, but that's really hard to calculate because some of them never even gave you a limit, is what you're saying.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so that's perfect. So this is interesting because people pay a fraction of that to buy a finance suite, and here you are getting 7,500, 10 grand in initial startup credit. So how long into this process did you start getting that 7,500, 10 grand? I mean, how long did it take you to initially get that first 7,500, 10 grand?
I mean, once everything was established and we had went through the 20-point checklist, had all the monitoring set up, it was a matter of what?
About a week or two.
After that, well, some approvals on the spot.
Yeah, because we started right away, Ty. We didn't wait. After we got all the checklists done, we started applying right away.
Right away.
Because there was no point of waiting. We knew we needed it, and we needed the trade line. So D was like, let's start applying. So we did, and it was approval on the spot.
Some were approvals right on the spot.
Right.
Okay, so then you're saying, hey, look, we spent a week, 2 weeks getting credibility stuff set up to make sure our business was going to get approved. Then after that, we started applying right away. Within another couple weeks, so a total of, let's say, 30 days, you were probably 7,500, 10 grand in approvals within the first month.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mike had asked a question here about, hey, look, he said, while starting the first round of credit accounts like Quill, should I open a step 2 account like Staples with a personal guarantee or just wait? That's up to you, Mike. I mean, you know, what happens here is in order to get enough trade lines to move on to the next step, you have to have a certain amount of trade lines. So you can either sign with a PG and expedite the process, or as they just said, they found 9, 10, 12 sources of the finance suite where they didn't need to even do that. They had enough credit just from starter accounts to do it. So the answer really there is either way. So that being said, how many of these accounts did you then see turned around and actually report on your business credit reports?
Right now, we have 16 with Dun & Bradstreet, 14 with Business Experian, and 12 with Business Equifax.
Well, that's phenomenal, 12 with Equifax. They're hard to find accounts that report there. So the main ones, you got an average of about 15. So a large chunk of these you saw report. You saw Uline, you saw Quill, you saw Tiger Direct, you saw, did you see all those actually physically show up?
Yes.
Okay, so that they reported, and then did you get a time frame of how long it took to see those accounts actually report?
About 30 days.
Okay, 30 days. Now, you know I tell everybody 90, right? So I tell everybody 90 to set an expectation that can easily be met, but you're talking about the real reality of it. The real reality is it doesn't take 90 days. It takes about 30 to 90. So in your case, it only took about, once you got approved for this credit, started using it, it only took about 30 days or a month for that to actually report, give you a profile and score.
Yeah, by 30, 45 days. Yeah, and then another one we forgot, Dale.
Oh yeah, and Ty, I was gonna interject one thing with the trade lines report. When you're first initially starting out, you can ask them. You can say, you know, always be nice when you call your business owner. Hey guys, I'm just starting out. I'm gonna use, you know, I'll call Quill. I want to use you guys. I like the products that you have. Can you tell me when do you report? They'll tell you. Like Quill will tell you, I report about 14 days in, or I report. It depends on when you make your payment. Typically, it's 14, 15 days in, and you can build a great relationship with Quill, and you can have an account manager that'll work directly with you. So you can ask those questions with Quill, Uline, Tiger Direct. They want you to do business with them. So you can always ask this question, hey, who do you report to? And when do you report? I'm just starting out, I need your help. Can you help me out? People love to help you out.
Yeah, and I love this call because, you know, you embraced the process. And it's a big difference between somebody that just treats this as a task list of things to do. You really got it. You embraced it. You set your business up credibly. You got starter vendors you could really use. You really used the credit to be able to actually build the business. You wanted to build relationships with these vendors. You talked to them about how long will it take to report to get a good idea. And then you found that most of them on average were about 15 to 45 days to really report after you started using the credit.
Yeah,
correct.
right.
Okay, so you got the starter vendors, you went in, they gave you the net accounts, you got approved, you went through this process, then you started to see these accounts report. Then did you take the next step of moving on to revolving store credit?
Yeah, that's when Dell came into play. That's when Office Max, Office Depot came into play. That's
The
when
gas cards.
Walmart, the fleet gas cards, Wex Tools,
Global.
Exxon, Shell.
Global Fleet.
And just to clarify, these are all cards that you currently have right now, that your real credit cards that you have going through the process, that are all revolving business credit cards that most of them or all of them, did they require a personal guarantee, no personal guarantee? Did you provide a social or no social to get them?
Ty, you know what? We were trying to figure that out the other day, and I cannot recall Not
No.
one card that we have where we actually put a PG on it.
Okay, so from your experience, everything we're talking about so far, all these vendor accounts, all those revolving store credit that you're talking about, the Fleet, the Walmart, the Office Depot, the Dell, none of this stuff, from your knowledge, even looking back, had any kind of personal guarantee.
No, there is no personal
I
guarantee.
have a funny story about the Walmart card. Okay, so we got approved at Walmart for $2,500, right? We got approved a month before we even knew we were approved, because they don't always tell you if you're approved or not. You just get the card in the mail. Hey, you're approved, and you talked about that. So we got I called Walmart. I said, well, ma'am, we put an application in. She said, you've been approved a month ago. I said, where's the card? It took a little while to get the card, but we were already approved. All she needed me to do was call. I made one phone call. We were already approved. I'm like, D, this is crazy. The gas cards came the same way. Shell came with a $4,500 limit.
So Shell came with a $4,500 limit gas card, no personal guarantee required.
No, listen, it gets even better. If I want to go buy tires, want to get my oil changed, if my car's not running, it's not just gas. It's also services on there as well. It's the mobile. It's also because we're a mobile unit, so it's also other things on there. Well, if let's say you have a trucking business and the truck breaks down, well, Shell has not just the gas part of it, just like Exxon. They also have a part where if you need services for the car, you can also get that set up just by applying for that gas card. You can have those additional services, and you can go and buy snacks. If you're hungry, you want it for it's business. It's a write-off. You can go and get snacks as well. There's a limit on there for that too.
This is the second time that you specifically referenced using business credit to buy snacks. What's going on here?
I'm just saying.
She's a little petite woman, so she.
I'm saying, I've seen you. I mean, you seem to be eating a lot of snacks here. I don't know. I mean, when you're using credit to buy snacks, that's a lot of snacks.
You're a truck driver. You can get hungry on the road.
All right, so name out some of the limits here. I mean, when you talked about $4,500 on the Shell, what other kind of limits did you get on these Walmart, the Dell? I mean, any of them that you know off the top of your head, kind of shout out some of the limits that you got on these cards.
Dell was $10,000. Walmart is
$2,500.
Office Depot is $2,500.
Right. Staples is $2,000.
Staples is $2,000. Oh, Lowe's. Lowe's is $2,000.
No PG with Lowe's.
Let me see what else. Let me look through.
Exxon is $2,500.
Exxon $2,500. We said Shell was $4,500.
Global Fleet is $2,500.
Now, I'm hearing something in the background. Are you looking at these cards? Are you like
Yes.
you're going through? Okay, you're like, I have too many to remember these, so I'm just gonna actually hear. I hear the plastic clicking around there.
It is too many to remember.
Oh, and
right.
Sears.
Oh, we have Sears. Sears is $4,500. Sears no PG.
Okay, so you got approved pretty quickly thereafter. 30 days to start building the credibility, 30 days to build the vendor accounts. You're 60 days in, 60, 90 days in, you're getting all these limits you just recited. It sounds like, anywhere between 2,500, $5,000 on average, with Dell was being the high of, 10 grand you got, all revolving without the personal guarantee. So and Lowe's, you named off a lot of them. What about denials? Did you struggle to get any that you tried to apply for and that you weren't approved for?
Yeah, we and this is one of the
Prematurely.
ones. Yeah, this is one of the ones that you say is fairly an easy one to get, which is Amazon.
Wow, really? Have you got approved with Amazon since?
No, well, actually, what we found
an address issue.
Yeah, what we found out. That's when we found out about the address issue, that there was an address mismatch. But then here's something ironic: Amazon uses the same bank that some of the other vendors use. And they approved us, and we don't know how they approved us with the address mismatch. And the only thing, it's not actually the address mismatch. It was the name, Success Tax Relief LLC, and Success DBA Success Tax Relief. That was the difference.
Everything has to match.
Okay. Now, Victor, you asked how long did it take to get the first accounts report. They'd already said that. They said that it took them about 30 days to build the credibility, actually about 2 weeks to build the credibility stuff. After that, they spent 2 weeks actually applying and getting approved, and it took another month or 45 days for those to all report. So from once they applied and got the credit approved, it took, and they used it, it took them about a month to 45 days to report. I always tell people it could take up to 90 days, but that was their answer, is it took them about 30 to 45 days. Any other ones that you got denied for outside of Amazon?
Yes, Staples. We prematurely applied for Staples too soon.
Right.
Because Staple has criteria you have to meet, and make sure the application is filled out correctly. And you do need to call and verify. That's one thing we did do too, Ty. This helped us. We call and establish a relationship with everybody we apply for. And they pick up the phone fairly quickly because it's business. So we established a relationship with everybody. I think that made a difference too.
Yeah, no, just to clarify with everybody on the call, that's not necessary, right? I mean, the steps work whether you don't, but I admire that, respect that, and I suggest that that's a great idea because, you're building relationships here. You're not just walking through a process like a robot. So I don't want anybody to think that has to be done. It definitely does. That these kind of results come if you do or don't, but it's a great idea, Thelma. I mean, you definitely want to build that kind of relationship if you can. It only makes sense to.
Right, and for the record time, we do have a Staples card.
Yeah,
okay,
we do.
Perfect. Because in my experience, Staples and Home Depot are pretty tough. I mean, they require some established credit to get. Now, Amazon, I was surprised by, but that sounded like a simple issue. So those are the main ones you'll really had problem with. You got a ton of credit approved. Amazon was tough. Address issue, you figured it out. Staples was tough, but you got some other credit, went in back in and got approved with them.
Right.
Exactly. And that Walmart card too, Ty, it doubles as a Sam's card. So that Walmart card can be used either or. Just so people know, if you get the Walmart card, it can also be used as Sam's.
Okay, perfect. So now, how long did those accounts take to report? The revolving accounts. You went in, you got them, you got approved. About how long did you see before using those before those started to report?
Yeah, 30 to 45 days.
30, 45. So vendor, store credit, everything, let's say even cash credit, across the board, you found 30 to 45 days for these type of accounts to get reported.
Yes.
Okay. And when you then move in at that point and start getting the Visa, the MasterCard, the cash credit, which I know you mentioned the Amex. So you then move forward to the final step of started getting real cash credit cards. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have any idea at that point in time, how many trade lines you had reported before you started to apply and get approved for the cash credit? Do you remember that?
Oh, wow. We had to have more. It was at least 10.
At least 10.
We had at least 10.
At least 10.
Okay, so you had 10 reported, which is what we suggest, and then you moved in to start getting store credit. And the time frame up to this point. So we spent about a month to start getting a vendor credit, or a month to start getting vendor account, or 2 weeks to get vendor credit, a month to get it reported. Then you started to get store credit. So in total time, from beginning of starting this process, how long did it take before you got your first Visa, MasterCard, cash credit type of credit card?
It was somewhere between about 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months, which is exactly what I say, 120 days, which is 4 to 6 months. So that's what you found too. You found within 4 months you were able to move in to start getting cash credit, and you started to obtain that within the 4 to 6 month time frame, from starting from nothing up to that point.
Right.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and what kind of limits did you find on those type of cash credit accounts?
Well, let's see. This is
2,500.
2,500 on the
MasterCard for 2,500.
And then I always refer to this card as the granddaddy of them all, with the American Express Business Platinum. And there's a way you can go on there and check to see how much you can actually get. So periodically I'll go in and type in 50,000, 100,000 just to see, and it's always approved. So I don't really know what the limit is on this card.
On American Express.
That's a good problem to have. That's a great problem to have, is when you're like, I don't even know, but no matter what I put on there, they accept it.
Exactly. So we haven't been turned down.
Okay, so you got multiple cash credit cards, $2,500 limits to ones like Amex that you don't know what the limits are. Have you applied or got any other cash credit beyond those few that you mentioned?
Any other cash credit? No, I believe, and it's once I got the American Express, I kind of shut down.
You kind of shut down. You got what you needed out of the process, and the rest is there if you need it. You just decided not to keep applying for more.
That's
right. And let's say one interject too. The Shell has a MasterCard program that we can get into, and the Exxon has the same thing. So that's the purpose of building that relationship. Like when new things come up, they call us. So Exxon has a program now. We can actually get a Visa card. We just haven't gone through the steps, but we've been approved for it. And also Shell has one attached. It's a MasterCard. You can use it anywhere.
Okay, so they're now reaching out to you. They're now coming to you saying, we've got these programs out. We got a Visa. We got a MasterCard. Do you want it? So, I mean, that's what this is now translated into, is they're now coming to you and saying, do you want this money?
Absolutely.
Well, as a matter of fact, they called, was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday they called for, American Express called to see if we wanted to apply for another American Express.